All right, so let's go on to intervals. And it is in the book, but just stick with me. You can read the book. The book has some information. You might want to read that. Usually students tell me it's easier to just use what I tell you. And I also have a handout that probably explains it a little better. Okay, so the first thing, and the definition of an interval, is the distance between two nodes. So we're measuring the distance between two nodes. So we always have two nodes, right? That's an interval. So any two nodes can be an interval. And we always count the first node. So the distance between these two nodes, well, let's make this bass clef. The distance between these two notes, this is A to B, it's a second. We call that a second. So in an interval, we'll always have a number, and we'll always have a quality. Okay, but let's just worry about the number for a minute. And basically it goes by letter name, but we can also count them on the staff. So A to A, we actually call that a unison, or we use the number 1. So when we see number 1, if it's the same note, we call that a unison. That's number 1. So the next one, A to B, is a second. We use 2. A to C would be a third, would be 3. And what's interesting, what you'll notice is that the intervals, the numbers, are pretty easy to recognize because if they're right next to each other, it's going to be 2. If it's the same note, it's going to be 1. If they're right next to each other, it's going to be 2. A third, for example, this is A to C, right? Well, here's another way a third could be B to D. That's a third too. Does everybody see what I'm saying? You just count 1, 2, 3, B to D. It's a third. So a third always looks like this. It's like a space to the next space, or a line to the next line. So it's going to be line, line, or space, space. Right? That's what a third looks like. Okay, then the next one, A to D. A fourth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, we always start with the number, with the first letter. 1, 2, 3, 4. This could be a fourth too. D to G. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it doesn't have to start on A, it can start on any letter, and then we would just go 4 letters up. So a fourth, for example, from C, if I said give me a fourth above C, it would be F. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's F. Right? A fifth would be A to E. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or it could be D to A. That's a fifth. And you can see a fifth, like a third, is space to space. A fifth would be a space, skip the space, and then go to the next space. Or start on the line, skip a line, go to the next line. So when you practice these, after a while, you get pretty good at just looking at it and say, oh, it's a third, it's a fifth, it's whatever it is. You just it becomes fairly automatic because it's easy to see. Now this doesn't even matter if it's treble or bass clef at this point. The number is always going to be the same, isn't it? Because this would be A to B in bass clef, that's a second. This would be F to G in treble clef, that's a second. So on the staff, you can really tell. You don't even have to think about the letters so much. You know, that's a second, third, fourth, fifth, fifth. It's easy to see. Everybody with me so far? So we just count from the bottom note to the top note, the letters, and that's the number. So we're always going to have a number. So far we talked about fifths. We did not talk about sixth. Here's a sixth. B to G. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or I could look at this. I could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we want to learn to get these numbers. That's the first step. Or it could be A to F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or if I gave you an E, And I said, what's a sixth above E? What would that be, Brandy? It would be C, wouldn't it? You would just count up to C. E, F, G, A, B, C. It's the sixth note above E. So a sixth above E would be C. A sixth above B, what would that be? G, right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, and so that's their sixth. A seventh would be, for example, G to F. Any kind of G to any kind of F is a seventh, right? Could be G sharp to F, could be G flat to F, it could be G to F sharp. They're all sevenths because it's the letter name. Doesn't matter what accidental I use. It's always, that's the number. It's always going to be according to the letter name. So if I start on G, what's a seventh above G? F. If I start on D, what's a seventh above D? C. Another way to think of it, you know that A to A is what? It's 8. Now an octave is an interval, but we didn't tell you that at that point. We just said it was an octave, but an octave is an interval. And that's, of course, we use the number 8. So if I said A to A, that's the distance. It's an octave. Octave means 8. So instead of saying, we can say eighth, but usually we say octave. Like, for example, we don't say first, we say unison. So for 1, we say unison. For 8, we say octave. For the rest, we say the numbers second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. All right, so to get a seventh, it's kind of easy. If you know that it's 1 below, you could just take the octave and go back 1, right? So what's a seventh above F? E, right. What's a seventh above C? B. See how easy that is? And an octave, you know, is the same letter, right? So what's an octave above A? A. What's an octave above E? E. Easy. Yes?
How would you count like intervals, like going backwards, like an A to G, like an octave below that G, or would you just count it like a G to A and say it's G?
Well, it's the same. You know, this would be G to A would be a seventh below G. G is a seventh above A, but this A is a seventh below G. Does that answer your question? All right, so it's the same way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I think I just worded my question. I don't know.
You just say it's like a seven.
Are you talking if it's over an octave apart?
I'm saying, take that G, bring it down an octave.
Yes, and then what?
It'd just be like a seventh below G. Like, just say below.
Okay.
Well, if I brought the G down an octave, that would be a second.
Uh-huh. That was my question.
A to G,
Is always.
that would be a second there.
Mm-hmm.
Just like it's a second here. Because they're right next to each other, right? And then when I write that on the staff, if I'm on bass clef and I write a G and an A, that's going to be a second, right? That's the only thing it can be. This is A is a second above G, and this G is a second below A. I could say this, or if I wrote it like this, A to G, I could say this G is a seventh above A, but this A is a seventh below G. But it's always a seventh. And it doesn't matter, I just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's the answer. Does that answer the question? Okay. All right, so we're good on that part so far? All right. Here's the next part. Now this is so easy that it's going to be confusing. I shouldn't say that. You're not going to be confused, but I mean that's the thing that's I think the most confusing about it is that it's so easy, and this is easy, but you just have to memorize this. All right, so you're confused already. All right, So here's a major scale, which we've been talking about for a few weeks now, right? C major scale. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the tonic of C major and make an interval out of each step. So if I put a C here, I have two C's. That's a unison. If I put a C here, C to D, that's a second, 2. C to E is third. C to F is fourth. C to G, fifth. C to A, sixth. C to B, seventh. C to C. Pretty easy, isn't it? Everybody see that? I just go every step of the scale. The first step is 1. The second step, C to C, is 2. C to E is 3. Third step, right? C to F, fourth step is a fourth. C to G, it's the fifth step, it's a fifth. C to A, it's the sixth step, it's a sixth. And C to B, it's a seventh step, so that's a seventh. And C to C is your octave. Notice how I've written all the intervals too. Now the unison I write right next to each other because that's the only way I can write them. The second, I do have to put the C or the top note a little bit off to the right, but I try to make them touch. The rest of the intervals, and this is the way I want you to write them, you rewrite them directly above one another. I guess I got a little off, but directly above, it should be directly above one another, okay? All right, here's the next step. That's a major scale, and I told you that in the period of common practice, which is the sort of music theory that we're learning to start with, that what's the fundamental organizational feature? Major key signatures, major scales, right? So it's the same with intervals. And so what we're going to learn is we're going to learn the qualities in the major scale, and that's what we base all the rest of them on. So this is what you want to memorize. 1, 4, 5, and 8 are, you notice I put a P. P equals perfect. These are called perfect intervals. So the intervals in the major key signature of the major scale are perfect intervals. 1, 4, 5, and 8. That never changes. If it's in a major scale and it's a 1, it's perfect. If it's in the major scale and it's fourth, it's perfect. If it's in the major scale and it's a fifth, it's perfect. If it's in the major scale and it's an octave, it's perfect. It just is. Don't have to know why. Well, we can talk about why maybe later, but not right now. And all you have to know is that it is. It just is. It's easy, isn't it? But isn't that easy to remember? 1, 4, 5, and 8 are perfect. So I can say to you, what are the perfect intervals in the major scale? And you will say
1, 5, 8.
1, 4, 5, and 8. So there's 4 of them. There's 1, 4, 5, and 8. If they're in the major key signature, they are perfect. That's all you have to know. No, nothing else right now. All right. Then there's a few left. There's 4 of them left. Okay, there's 2, 3, 6, and 7. 2, 3, 6, and 7 are major. Why? Because they're in the major key signature. They're in the major scale. They are major. So M, I'm just going to use a capital M. Make sure you make it like this, please, like very angular, because we are going to do minor too, and I'm hearing that some students are not making them clear enough for Dr. Connell in Music 101, and I really wanted you to make it clear. I mean, there's a definite difference, and I'll show you as we get to minors, but make your majors so they're very obviously big M's. All right, so the intervals in the major key signature of 2, 3, 6, and 7 are major. That's all we have to know. So those two things. There are perfect intervals and major intervals in a major scale in a major key signature. 1, 4, 5, and 8 are perfect. 2, 3, 6, and 7 are major. Is that easy? It is easy, isn't it? Everybody, isn't that easy?
Yeah.
It is, isn't it? So 2, 3, 6, and 7 are major. 1, 4, 5, and 8 are perfect. Now that has to go on automatic pilot. You can't be, let's see, is 2 perfect? No, 2 is major. So that means you'll never have a major fourth? No, you don't have that. It's always perfect. You'll never have it. You'll never have a perfect second. It's no such thing. 1, 4, 5, and 8 are perfect. 2, 3, 6, and 7 are major. Yes?
So what's the reasoning behind that? Why in history did they create?
Because the gods of music created it that way. Well, can we not talk about it can we talk about I can
You'll get to it someday?
we'll talk about it. Let's talk about that someday, but not today. Let's talk about this. Let's keep it really easy today, and just all we have to know, because in the whole scheme of things, it doesn't really matter
Okay.
for us at this point.
Here's my curiosity.
I'm glad you're curious, and I appreciate that question, and keep asking that question. We will talk about it, but not today, okay? Because I don't want to make this more confusing, because you don't really have to know that part to do this. All you have to know is I want to keep it as easy as I can right now. 1, 4, 5, and 8 are perfect. 2, 3, 6, and 7 are major. Hey, it's like because you get in your car and you turn the key and you start it and you drive to school, you get here. You don't have to know how to take the car apart and fix it every time you get into it. Do you?
If you're stranded and it's broken, you might.
Right. There are times. I agree. I understand that, and I'm in complete agreement with you. And I totally want to talk about the thing. In fact, I'd love to sit here for 3 hours and talk about it with you, but I don't want to do that right now. Because we could go into it, and we could say the history of music and how this developed and why we call it perfect, why we call it major. But the bottom line is, you don't need to be a mechanic to drive the car. Really, most of the time you hire a mechanic, right? All you need to know is you get in, you turn the key, and you drive. You put it in gear. So that's all I want you to know. 1, 4, 5, and 8, for right now, are perfect. 1, 4, 5, and 8 will always be perfect. That's just for right now. That's all I want to concern ourselves with. 2, 3, 6, and 7 in major keys will always be major. All right. So what does that mean when we're looking at intervals? Let's practice a few. Can I erase this? All right. Let's say I want a major second above G. Okay, so what's a second above G? We know it's going to be some kind of an A. It has to be some kind of a G, some kind of an A. That's a second. All right, what I can do is I can say, all right, the key signature of G. I know the key signature of G. What is it? It's 1 sharp. Okay, it tells me that F is sharp, but it tells me something about all the other 6 notes too, doesn't it? What does it tell me? Everything else is natural. So that means A is natural in the key of G, correct? So G to A is in the key of G, so that is a major second. You see? Yes?
I have another question. What if you draw like that A like way up there or something? Would that still count as a second, or would that be like 9?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a second anymore, really. But don't worry about that right now. We're gonna do everything. You're gonna know so much about intervals in the next. We're gonna do them for 4 weeks. You're gonna love intervals when we're done. You're gonna know. You're gonna be interval experts when we're finished. You get a spoonful.
Thank you.
That's it. You get a spoonful of that. We'll keep it easy. Yes.
So then, what would the major 7 be because of the sharp? Just the
All right. So let's say we want a major 7th, right? All right. So we know a 7th above G is F. Right, everybody? And then I just say, okay, what's the key signature of G? 1 sharp, and that is F sharp. So that means the major 7th is F sharp. It's in the key. It has to be in the key signature of that key, of the bottom note. Right? It's the same, isn't it? You just use the key signature of the bottom note. That's what you always do for perfect and major intervals. Use the key signature of the bottom note. Very easy. Major. That's why we know. That's why we were looking at those notes and saying, what's the key signature of that note, right? We said, all right, let's say we want a perfect fourth above this note. What note is E? Pardon me. This is E, isn't it? Sometimes I answer my own questions. What?
3 flats.
Good. What's a fourth above E? A. So we know it's going to be some kind of an A, don't we? E to A is a fourth. Now we say the key signature of E flat is, Jordan,
Flats.
3 flats. What are they?
EEA.
What does that tell us about A?
It's flat.
It's flat. So that means a perfect fourth above E flat is A flat. It's whatever that key signature tells us is going to be the major or perfect interval. Isn't that easy? Some students say this is they can't believe how easy intervals are.
And we don't gotta write that, like when we write our perfect fourth, we don't have to specify in the bottom. You know what I'm saying? Since we're putting accidentals up in the staff.
We're not using key signatures now. We're going to just do individual notes with intervals, and we're going to write in the accidental that we need to make the major or perfect interval. Yes.
So for it to be a perfect fourth, the fourth has to be of the first notes in that first note scale.
Right.
So if you were in like the C major scale, like F to B wouldn't be a perfect fourth. You know that.
Well, the bottom note isn't C, it's F.
Right.
We always use the key signature of the bottom note. So what's the key signature? This is a fourth, right?
Right.
If we want it to be a perfect fourth, we'd have to use the key signature of the bottom note. What's the key signature of F?
1 flat.
Which is?
B
So that tells me B is
flat.
flat. So the perfect fourth would be F to B flat. We always use the key signature of the bottom note.
So if it's not a perfect fourth, is it just
Then we're not going to worry about that today.
okay?
That's the part we're not going to talk about right now.
We wanna jump ahead, don't we?
Well, it's good in a way, but let's get this first part really good and then we'll go ahead. All right? Not really. It's good you're asking the question, and we're going to answer all the questions that have been asked. We are going to answer, but not right now. You can just. That's nice. You can really let that. Actually, it's good. Just keep looking at these intervals and asking the questions, and that's how you learn. I don't have to give you every answer. A lot of it you'll learn even if I don't answer it. But I will talk about most everything that you've asked. And we'll try. Someday sometimes after we get into something for a while, we just talk about it and really talk. We ask all the questions, but I don't think today is a good day to do that because we're just starting out with this. And let's make sure we get the first thing. And even students now I talk to in more advanced theory classes, and they're having trouble, and I talk to them, ask them questions. I find out, usually there's some fundamental thing that they weren't real skilled at, like intervals or spelling triads. And that's usually more the problem than it is understanding the more advanced material. If you're not fast enough at spelling intervals or triads or something, we haven't done triads yet, but if you're not when you go to more advanced theory, then it's going to be hard, right? Whereas if you stay with the basic thing, get really good at it, then when you go on to the next thing, it stays pretty easy. You stay comfortable that way. It's nice, right? It's easier. You don't get so much anxiety. We got enough anxiety. We want to make things a little bit easy. All right. Let's say we're going to do a major sixth. See, they're all the same, aren't they? Perfect and major intervals, they're all the same. A major sixth above A. And by the way, we're always doing them above the note too. Below the note is a different thing. That's another thing. We're always going to do above the note. So what's a sixth above A, Josh? F. So we know the answer is some kind of an F, but now we have to find the key signature of the bottom note. What's the key signature of A? 3 sharps. What does that tell me about F? It's sharp. So a major sixth above A is F sharp.
Some of the majors is always
Well, we're always going, we can do intervals above or below notes, but we're going to start with intervals above notes, just because that's how we're going to learn them. It's the first step, taking this in steps. So we just said a sixth above A was F, and then we took the key signature of A, and that was 3 sharps, and it's F, C, and G sharp. So that tells us that F is sharp in that key, so I know a major sixth above A is F sharp. Yes?
Did you say you were going to tell us later why we have to name it perfect or major?
Yes.
Okay. 'Cause I'm very curious.
But now we just know that perfect intervals are what?
1, 4, 5, and 8.
And major intervals are 2, 3, 6, and 7. So if you're being asked in a major scale, they're always 2, 3, 6, and 7 are major. 1, 4, 5, and 8 are perfect. And when you do any interval, this is always the first step. You've got to find the major perfect interval. This is the first step in intervals. You always have to get that. All right, let's do another one. Let's say we're on B, and I want a major third above B. All right, so the first thing you want to do is just get the letter name. What's a third, Alyssa? D. So I know B to D, 1, 2, 3 is a third, right? And then the second step is I find the key signature of the bottom note. What's the key signature of B, Alyssa? Josh?
5 sharps.
It's 5 sharps. Okay? So again, we're back to what did I tell you about key signatures? How fast are you supposed to know them? As fast as you can say your name. Okay, until the key signature are as fast as you can say your name, you're going to get bogged down in this, everybody, probably. So practice those key signatures. Keep practicing them. So Alyssa, back to you. What's the key signature of B? 5 sharp. So what does that tell us about D?
It's gonna be sharp.
That is sharp, isn't it? So the 5 sharps are F, C, G, D, and A in order. F, C, G, D, and A. And what does it tell me about the last 2 sharps? E and B are natural. So 5 of the notes are sharps. F, C, G, D, A. E and B are natural. You see, I can just go through that order of sharps, and I can know pretty fast, right? Because there's 7. So if I know 5 of them are 7 notes, 7 letters, if 5 of them are sharp, I know 2 of them are natural. All right, so that was a major third. Good. Let's say I want a perfect octave above D sharp.
Middle step. Wrong.
So I know what? Ada. It's the same note, right? There's no key signature for D sharp, but I do know that a perfect octave is going to be exactly the same note. Always. It's going to be exactly the same note. Once in a while, we do get into some, though. Like, for example, let me just throw a little monkey wrench in here a minute. I want a major third. Actually, let's do a different one. Let's do a major sixth above D sharp. Okay, somebody who hasn't done one. What's a sixth above D sharp? It could be any kind of D. What's a sixth above that? Sylvester. What?
G.
No, it's a sixth. Calvin. It's a B, isn't it? Okay, so I know D to B is a sixth, right? Now, is there a key signature for the key of D sharp? There is not. And so what I'm going to do is just take that sharp off. What's the key signature of D? 2 sharps. What does that tell me about B in the key of?
It's natural.
So D to B is a major sixth, right? But this is D sharp. So that means, now if I'm measuring the distance between the 2 notes, if I say D to B is a major sixth, if I move both notes up a half step, wouldn't they be the same distance apart? Wouldn't they be exactly the same if I move them both up a half, whatever, if I move them both the same, it's still going to be the same distance, right? So I know that D to B is a major sixth. So D sharp to what kind of B would be a major sixth? B sharp. So now I've got D sharp to B sharp, major sixth.
Exceptions to the rule.
Could you put C?
No, because that wouldn't be a sixth anymore. That would be a seventh. There's only one answer here. There's not two. There's only one answer that works. Well, because D to C is what interval?
That's 7.
It's a seventh, so now it's no longer a sixth. So it has to. The answer is D sharp to B. It has to be D sharp to B sharp. All right, let's try another one. It's still a major sixth. D sharp to B sharp is a major sixth. Let's do a major third from D sharp. So what's a third from D? F. We know some kind of an F. Okay, again, no key signature of D sharp, but I'll take that off. What's the key signature of D?
2 sharps.
It's 2 sharps, isn't it? What does that tell me about F? A sharp. So that tells me D to F sharp is a major third. Now, but I don't want D, I want D sharp. So what's going to, if D to F sharp is a major third, what's a major third above D sharp? F double sharp.
So we're allowed to do that.
You have to do that. Not only allowed, it's a must. You are going to use double sharps and double flats to get the right answers here. You're going to end up using, almost every homework assignment in intervals, you will end up with using sometimes a double sharp or double flat. Because you can't say G, because D to G is what interval? It's some kind of a fourth, isn't it? What?
I said then it would be perfect.
No, it actually wouldn't be perfect. It would be a diminished fourth, but we didn't talk about that yet. D sharp to G would be a diminished fourth, and that's not a major third. But don't worry about that yet.